The fifth entry in a horror franchise can't be that good, can it? So this is the fifth entry into the Evil Dead franchise, a franchise that has remained consistent. But I'll get onto that in a bit.
Mom?
Mommy's with the maggots now.
The movie stars Lily Sullivan and Alyssa Sutherland. This movie gets rid of the cabin in the woods and instead goes to a high-rise building where a family discovers the Book of the Dead and raises some demonic forces upon the inhabitants of this building. And let's just say, carnage candy.
Groovy.
So let's get on to the positives. First of all, there's a lot of them, so let's go through them. I want to just mention how consistent this film franchise is. Evil Dead 1 kicking it off as one of the best indie horror films to ever be created, especially in the 80s. Then we have Evil Dead 2, a reinvention of what the film was going to be and turning it into almost like a comedy. Army of Darkness then going beyond and turning it into almost a fantasy horror franchise. And then the visceral take that they had in the Evil Dead 2013 film, which I think to this day is probably one of my favourites in the franchise. But can this film quite get that? Not really. But is it a bloody good film? Definitely. If you're gonna have a horror film, it better be scary. And this film has some really suspenseful moments, but it's just put to 11 in this film sometimes. It is so good. There are some things off camera, or rather to the side of the camera, and you're just waiting for that moment that, oh God, what's gonna happen? And that movie does that numerous times throughout. And I think that is a credit to the filmmaking. The cinematography is creative in some respects. It has these moments of Dutch tilts, which is the tilting of the camera to make you feel really kind of queasy. And it does that a few times, does sort of whip pans where it moves the camera very quickly, and wow, it creates this, again, a very visceral scene. And also it has ashcan, which is one thing that I was very happy about that they still kept from the original franchise that this movie is based on. Throughout as well, this is a sign of good filmmaking, is they hint at things to come. They show you items and then those things come into play. And that is just really good filmmaking. Everybody in this film was really good at the performances that they gave for this film, especially Alyssa Sutherland, who plays the main Deadite. And she was incredible. She was compelling. You really felt for her character. At times it's weird because she is the villain, but not of her own account. And even children, which is a big thing in horror films to try and control, is children in horror films can either be really bad or really good. And in this film, thank God, really, really good. And let's just say, with me being a big horror film fanatic, okay, it's a been there, done that sort of thing. It's nothing different, but it's different enough for this franchise. And I think that's what breathes new air into what could be just a rinse and repeat of what's happened before, but never gets to that point where it does for this franchise. There are some brilliant callbacks to the original franchise, which shows the love and care that this film has. I've got to say, there are some creative designs of some of these Deadites. I won't get much into it because I don't want to spoil your viewing experience, but let's just say some of those designs, very creative, loved it, with certain parts of lighting and little hints of seeing it here and there, is chef's kiss. So good. If you want to see something slightly different from what we know as being Deadites, this is something that we've never seen before. And for that I really, again, I commend the filmmakers for trying something a little different.
It's me. can't take my baby.
A lot of the gore effects in this and the blood is practical, and that is what I like to see.
Hail to the king, baby.
And that's what this film franchise was based on, is these amazing effects, which were at the time revolutionary, especially with the first Evil Dead being such an indie film that was made basically by two best friends, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, and this movie just excels at those practical effects. But there is something that bothers me a little bit, and I'll get onto that a little bit later about the gore. Now let's move on to the negatives, which there aren't a lot of. But there are certain story elements and side bits that don't really affect the overall experience. There were a lot of times where characters wouldn't have the emotions that I would suspect them to have after seeing what they've seen. But we can go past that because a lot of the film excels at different things and it doesn't need to dwell on certain elements that might slow down the film. And that's another thing, is the pace was a little bit slow at the start. It did take a while to get into, but when it did, it really did. But anyway, moving on to the negatives again. Sorry, I can't stop talking about the positives.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
There were some weirdly edited moments throughout the film where you would feel like they would have entered some sort of gore effect, or maybe they had done that and they were forced to cut it down. It just seems like there's a scene missing here. A little bridge scene, like just to explain what's going on. But this has led me to believe that there will be a gorier cut, which hopefully, if there is a gorier cut, I will be ordering that as soon as it's available. A big thing about horror films is character decisions and how they deal with this sort of high tension atmosphere. And there is just some character decisions which don't make sense, and that's what this film does as well. There's a lot of character decisions you're thinking, why would you do that there?
Truly amazing.
There wasn't too many moments where that happened, and a lot of it was headstrong characters that actually just wanted to get out of the situation. And let's just talk about my mixed feeling. Now this is a big one. The gore was a bit too tame. A lot of people told me going into this film, you're a seasoned horror fan, but it might just make you feel sick, it might make you feel queasy, it might actually get to you. And the film didn't quite excel at the gore factor that I thought it would. Yes, there were some brilliant scenes with a cheese grater, but those scenes were few and far between, and it didn't quite make me as queasy as I expected it to, and I wanted it to. I've watched numerous gorier films like The Sadness and other films of that ilk, especially stuff like Martyrs, Inside, Frontiers, Switchblade Romance. All these things are just better at their gore factor. There was a lot of hype around the gore to this film, and it didn't quite hit the mark where I was like, ooh, this is award-winning gore. But I think people just was trying to play into the marketing of this film, which was that this film is one of the goriest films they've seen. It made them feel uncomfortable, and for those people it might have worked that way. So anyway guys, I give this movie, I think, a 4 out of 5. I think that's fair. I don't think it excels to the point of 5 out of 5, and I think there's better entries in the franchise that I would probably show people rather than this one. But I think if this is the first Evil Dead film that you've seen, it's a good starting point. I think some people should start off with this just to see how extreme some horror films can go. But overall, a brilliant viewing experience. I know both me and Kaylin have enjoyed this film thoroughly. You can click right here to watch the Renfield movie review. Yes, I know I was wearing the same t-shirt, but it's filmed on the same day. I thought, why not? So remember guys, like, subscribe, click on that bell icon to see what other videos that are coming up soon. And that's all from me, Johnny from Hangtime Horror. And remember, stay spooky. Bye guys.